we're here with Charlie White Thomson, the Saxo Bank UK CEO. Charlie, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. It's very good to see you.
Yeah, good to have you here. I know Saxo are good friends of FM, and good to have you here again. Let's start with the big news. Saxo enjoying 30th year anniversary celebrations, an absolutely amazing achievement. What has been the secret of Saxo's longevity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fantastic story. So, happy birthday to Saxo, 30 years old this year. Founded by Kim Fournay in 1992, in September 1992, with 70,000 euros and one employee. And I think it's just a great success story. And if you look at the brand around the world now, there's 15 offices, we have thousands of employees. And I think really what happened is that Saxo started as a broker and then moved quickly to a fintech. And I think since then, it's about single platforms, it's about technology stacks, it's about providing access to 50,000 financial instruments for our clients, both retail and institutional. And I think that the firm has stuck to their knitting. They've done what they do well, and they've invested in it, and they've stuck with it. And I think that a really important part has been the CEO and founder, who is still very active with the firm now, and you've seen that continuity. And the Scandinavian brand has also been an important part of this too.
Excellent. I mean, it really is an amazing achievement. In today's current climate, over the last 30 years as well, everything that has changed. And whilst you're celebrating your birthday month, you recently announced a sponsorship deal with Harlequins rugby team. How does Saxo plan to engage and onboard its fans, and how do you measure its ROI?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I'm really excited about our relationship with Harlequins. So we announced earlier on this year that we would be their official trading partner. And the thing I like about Harlequins is that I think there are many similarities between the two brands. I mean, they have a passion for their supporters, we have a passion for their clients. They think a lot about technology, we think a lot about technology. They think a lot about risk management, we think a lot about risk management. And I think there's a real esprit de corps there, which is what I think that we have at Saxo.
And wasn't there some sort of link up with technology? Harlequins are using your technology. Can you explain further?
Yeah, so I mean, basically at the heart of this, it is technology, and I think one of the things is about risk management. So at Harlequins, they use gum guards to assess concussion protocols. So you measure concussion protocol through your spit in the gum guard. And that means that you can rest your players so that you don't overplay them, and you can take them out of the game and say, hey, listen, your time's done for the time being. And I think that there's an interesting segue to Saxo, where we have our risk management, where we have all of our risk management tools to do that. And you asked a good question about ROI. And so the way I think about this, for me, it's brand. I would like more people to know about Saxo in the United Kingdom. And I think in addition to that, so ROI would be new trading clients, it's brand, it's about entertainment too. And I'm really excited about it, and I enjoy the chemistry that I have with Laurie, who's the CEO at Harlequins, and he's a person that I and we can do business with.
Excellent. Well, as a Sarries fan, I forgive you for it. But with prior deals in Formula One and Tour de France, mistake me if I'm wrong, but there hasn't been any football sponsorships from Saxo. Is this a deliberate strategy to avoid the high cost of Premier League football or global football?
Yeah, I mean, I think our approach at Saxo is to basically double down with the things that we care about. And whether that's newspapers, whether that's financial relationships, whether that's sporting relationships. And that's the decision here. So rugby at the moment, the Harlequins is our key focus. And as I said earlier, we're enjoying that relationship. But with football, never say never.
Okay, excellent. And so, you personally, moving on to yourself, Charlie,
yes.
if you can, you've been with Saxo UK just for a few years, but you've personally been in the industry for over 2 decades.
Yeah.
Despite the looks, despite the professional looks, what has been the most impactful changes to the finance industry in that time, and what has been a force for good and a force for bad?
Yeah, as I walked here today, as I walked through the City of London, I started my career at Baring Securities at America Square, and I remember that when we used to place orders, everything was by phone. And then when you had a buy ticket, it was a blue piece of paper, which you then put in the timestamp. And when it was a sell ticket, it was a pink bit of paper, and you put that, and then you stuck it onto a spike. So the biggest change for me is technology. And that, that has been the biggest change. But then if I think that, I've been involved in institutional and retail, but if I think about the retail lens, I think the biggest positive is that retail investors now have all the powers of an institutional investor. They have access to multi-asset financial instruments. They can manage their risk, they can go long, they can go short. They are extremely powerful. And I think that's the big change. I think there were early on in my career where it was basically single stocks. You may be lucky if you could buy a mutual funds, but things have changed a lot. And what I would encourage retail investors is to really seize this moment, to take advantage of all of the tools available to them. So that's on the positive side. On the less good side, I think the thing I worry about is leverage, over leverage. I think over leverage is not a good thing, and we at Saxo, do not support over leverage. I think it makes trading and investing much more difficult. I also think another thing that's less good is the lack of transparency around fees. I think that we at Saxo believe that you should be very transparent about fees. And I think that if people think that you can trade for zero in financial markets, and it's an oxymoron, it's a misnomer, and I think that I would like to see more transparency with fees. And then the final part of that is that if I think about the last 10 years, the thing that I worry about is that there's just been too much cheap money in the system, too much quantitative easing, too low interest rates, and as a result, we've created a generation of retail investors with a skewed attitude towards risk.
Okay, because I've read a couple of recent interviews from yourself, one with the Scotsman, I believe, and
yes,
you talked about policy failures and nanny finances, and markets shouldn't have to rely upon central banks to bail them out. Is the global banking system and our addiction to cheap money broken beyond repair? And then what can be done to fix it?
No, I don't think it's broken beyond repair, but I think if you talk about addiction, I would rather talk about dependency. I think that there's a dependency on cheap money. And over the last 10 years, as I just said, whenever there was a problem, a central bank would come in, they would cut rates, they would pump more money into the system in the form of quantitative easing. And I think that has not been a good thing. And therefore, really what I want to be able to do, or what I would encourage, is as we look out for the next 10 years, so the Goldilocks period is behind us, cheap money, get bailed out. If you look forward for the next 10 years, we are in a new paradigm. And therefore I think that investors need to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. They cannot rely on central banks coming to bail them out. They cannot rely on QE, they cannot rely on rate cut. Rates just cannot go down at the moment because of the inflationary environment we're in. And therefore that's the key thing for me. I think that it's about retail investors standing on their own 2 feet, managing their own risk. They cannot rely on central banks to bail them out. And that's why I've been talking about nanny finance. I wish that nanny finance in the form of central banks had been slightly more traditional.
It's interesting because you talk about retail investors. To me, there's almost like a whole new generation of retail, what I call the Robin Hood investors. And when I first started out in finance as a financial advisor, my first mortgage I ever sold was 13.75%.
Right.
Back in the early, God knows how long.
Yes.
So people don't say this. My fear is this whole new generation of retail investors do not know anything other than being dependent on low interest rates, cheap money, and how do we overcome that? Is it education or?
I think it's education. I think that, so I think you raise a really interesting point on inflation. So if you live in the United Kingdom, you haven't experienced inflation properly since the 1970s. And to experience it properly, you needed to be a working person in the 1970s. And therefore, when I want to get advice on that, I speak to my father and I speak to my father-in-law, because they remember what happened when we were in an inflationary environment. Things just moved. The price moved every year. It's a hidden tax. So I think it's a good idea. Speak to older members of your family, understand what they did. And then I think it's about, basically, we are in a new paradigm. The Goldilocks period is behind us. I think people need to recalibrate. People need to reset how they think about things. And we're in the shakeout phase there. And it's difficult. And this winter's going to be difficult. We have the consumer, we have the cost of living crisis, we have interest rates moving up, we have inflation. It's tough. And then everything for me always goes back to my core principle, which is manage your risk. It's extremely important to manage your risk. This environment that we've been in, which is just by the dip, that is behind us. We are in a new paradigm, and I think those people who acknowledge this and get prepared for this and be demanding of their wealth managers to ensure that they have all the tools to operate in this new paradigm, they will do well.
Wise words. Charlie, thank you very much for coming, thank you very much for speaking. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.